Okay. Is everybody ready? All right. Welcome, everyone. We want to welcome you to tonight's forum sponsored by CBS 7 and the Odessa American, along with our news partners at ICA Radio, KCRS News Talk 550.
This forum, of course, is live for us here, but we are going to replay this for those of you who missed it, or if you'd like to get another shot at it. It will be Thursday night at 9 o'clock on our MyTV 16 sister station. We want to thank those of our viewers who are now will be watching this as we are saying this. So we hope that you enjoy this forum and will help you to make your decisions before you go to the polls.
The forum will also be placed on the Odessa American and CBS 7's websites and Facebook pages. So that information is cbs7.com and also OAOA.com. You can watch the debate there as well.
Don't forget, early voting starts tomorrow, which is Tuesday, and you can cast your ballot. And then, of course, that includes the House District 81 race with incumbent state representative Brooks LANDGRAF and challenger Joshua Crawford. They will face off in that Republican primary.
So the primary will actually decide the winner, as there is no Democratic challenger in this race. A few ground rules that we are going to be using tonight. Each candidate gets a 1-minute opening statement and then 2 minutes to answer the questions. There is also an opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal as is needed. So the candidates will get a 2-minute closing statement as well tonight.
We also urge you to write your questions down if you like to. We have some note cards here on the front table. We can get those to you from you, our audience, if you would like to ask questions tonight. And with these, we will then present those. We want to introduce our moderators as well, and we'll have them stand up and turn and wave to you. First, I want to introduce from KCRS Radio, Robert Hallmark. And the Odessa American City Editor, John Vanderlyn.
Okay, so without further ado, we're going to begin tonight. We're going to start with incumbent Brooks LANDGRAF for his 1-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you, Jay and Tatum. Thank you to the event hosts for organizing this candidate forum. Very happy to be here. It is a true honor to be able to discuss the issues that are important to our fellow West Texans, but it's also an honor to serve as your state representative. My name is Brooks LANDGRAF. I was born and raised here in Odessa. My wife Shelby and I are very proud to raise our daughter Hollis Rose here in my hometown. My family's been ranching here in West Texas for 5 generations. Our conservative, Christian, West Texas values are ingrained in who I am. And that's why, as a state representative candidate 2 years ago, I made 4 promises to my fellow West Texans. I promised that I would be pro-life, that I'd be pro-gun, that I would fight to keep our taxes low, and that I would be a strong voice for West Texas. Well, having been on the job now for 13 months, I've delivered on all 4 of those promises by cutting taxes, by strengthening the Second Amendment, by protecting human life, and also while doing all of that, while balancing the state budget and cutting per capita spending. I'm looking forward to your questions this evening. Thank you again for the privilege of being here.
Brooks, thank you. Now I want to introduce his Republican challenger, Joshua Crawford.
Good evening. I'm Joshua Crawford, candidate for state representative. I've been married for 10 years to my beautiful wife, Janice. We have 3 kids, Benjamin, Jack, and Allie. They're 8, 6, and 4. We've been going to Odessa Bible Church for over 10 years. And for me, I've got a master's in public administration, which is basically an MBA for government. And I've had my own business for the last 8 years. We do IT, marketing, and we do oil and gas technology solutions. Some of the biggest issues facing our district are infrastructure, budget, education. And to me, those are things I'm going to go down and fight for your God-given liberties and put government back in its constitutional box. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our first questions are going to be about the economy, and this question is for both of you, and we'll ask the initial question. They may also have a follow-up question that we'd like to pose. Representative LANDGRAF, we'll start with you. With the downturn in the Texas economy, do you believe there will be an attempt to bring about a state income tax, and what would you do to fight it? Or is there a reason to consider one?
As a state representative, there would be a state income tax over my dead body. Texas is in a situation right now because of our economic climate where we actually need to be tightening our belt even more than we already have. In my opening remarks, you heard me discuss how important it has been for us to cut taxes while balancing the state budget and reducing per capita spending. I'm very proud of the record that we've built in doing that. But that was done when we had oil at roughly $100 per barrel. Right now we're in the high 20s. It's going to be a completely different economic situation for the state of Texas, and under any circumstances, but particularly when economic times are tough, that's when we need to look for more efficiencies and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse at every level of government in Texas. We don't have a revenue problem in this state. We have a spending problem. There's never a need under the circumstances that we find ourselves in to add new taxes, because that is only going to make our economic situation worse. Our economy will not improve by taxing our citizens in Texas. So I think doing that would be the complete opposite approach of what we need to do.
Mr. Crawford, same question. Do you need to repeat that, or do you understand?
No, sir.
You got it?
The budget is a big problem. To me, like my opponent, we'll have a state sales tax over my dead body as well. But the way we're going to fix this is by going into our budget, move to zero-based budgeting, make everyone prove and make sure that they need every little thing that go line item by line item, make sure they need everything every 2 years. Make them prove it. And to me, we need to diversify our economy. We do have a great economy out here. That's what attracts businesses here. And to me, by putting in a state sales tax, that's going to hurt us very bad, and I don't think we need it.
Okay, just if I could clarify, state income tax is what I said, not state sales tax.
Oh, sorry, state.
Okay. The follow-up to that is, and for both of you again, is because it's very easy for politicians to say, no new taxes over my dead body. What about fees? Those things seem to sneak into a lot of our professional licensing or other licensing that we run into across the state, and we've seemed to see a few of those added fees pop up, and really, are they any more than taxes? Representative LANDGRAF, what about fees that pop in?
Well, no, that's a good question. The way I see it, fees, if they're imposed by a government agency, are the same things as taxes. And we were very careful during the most recent legislative session, and this is another area where I'm proud of, that we did so many good things and made so many conservative reforms here in the state of Texas, and we did that without raising fees, without raising taxes. And in the case of our highway infrastructure, which we all know here in the oil patch is so important to the continued success and development of our state, is to have a good highway system. We made an investment at the state level, $4 billion. We did that how? We did that without raising taxes, without raising fees, without imposing new tolls. So it can be done. You have to be smart about the way that you're going through the state budget. You have to be smart about the way that you're going through and eliminating inefficiencies in the way that we do business in the state. When you do that, when you get smart with it, you can do that without passing on the costs to taxpayers all over the state. So yes, that's the approach that I take, and I'm glad that I have I'm very proud of the proven conservative record that I have of being able to not only not add new taxes, not add new fees, but cut taxes to the tune of $3.9 billion here in the state of Texas in the last 13 months alone.
Mr. Crawford, same question for you about fees.
Occupational licensing fees is hurting a lot of people. Certainly, a lot of these kids who are coming up through school, they're wanting to get into something, and they're having to pay all these fees time and time again. I believe that there are people that don't want them. You know, they use them as blocks to keep people either out. And to me, we've got to sit there. We've got to keep taxes low. And to me, about raising taxes through occupational licensing is not the way to do it. But overall, that is one thing that we got to do is, get rid of occupational licensing.
I'm going to ask this question of Mr. Crawford first. Do you have any possible conflicts of interest if you were to be elected as state representative, and can you explain that as well, please?
No, I do not. To the best of my knowledge, I have absolutely no conflicts of interest at this time. I do have a business, and to me, most of our entity contracts with anything are with local entities.
And so do you think that your business would never have the opportunity to earn a state contract or work with the state in any way?
No, we mainly deal with private people.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Landgraf, same question, please.
Well, not only is that not the case, of course, I've been in office now for 13 months and have to, make constant reports. But I guess going back, based on my experience, I left a very well-paying job when that I left because it was a political subdivision of the state of Texas. I resigned from that job so that I could serve my fellow West Texans in the legislature. So I know what it means to have to make sacrifices. I've proven that I will do that when it's necessary, and I absolutely did that. And although there is a financial price to be paid for that, that's the price that you pay to serve. And I'm happy to have that record. And if anything remotely similar to that arose in the future, I would take the same course of action.
And sir, do you think that your father's engineering firm could pose any type of conflict of interest for you when it comes to contracts for any type of thing that they would be needed for?
No, I don't believe that there would be any conflict of interest. I don't have any financial interest in that company. I'm not an engineer or anything like that, so there is no direct conflict of interest that would be there. So,
as far as a familial conflict of interest, you don't think that would be a problem?
I don't believe that it would, and if there's any specific issue that would arise, we would certainly take a look at that. I'm not aware of any that exist right now, but if that were to take place, we would do whatever would be necessary to avoid having a conflict of interest.
Thank you, sir.
This question did come from one of the people who are in our audience today. I'm going to ask both candidates. Representative Landgraf, I'll start with you. You've spoken more than once about repealing the school funding formula known as Robin Hood. So is that still the case? And what are your feelings on, is it a fact that Robin Hood school funding has been established by the Texas Supreme Court? So how do you reconcile those two ideas?
Well, there are two different issues there. I might just stay seated for this one. The two issues are the Supreme Court did issue a ruling, I believe, in 2005 that permitted the Robin Hood funding scheme. It did not make it compulsory. It did not require it to do that. The legislature still has jurisdiction over school finance in the state of Texas. In addition to that 2005 case, there is a case that the Texas Supreme Court has that they heard this fall. They have yet to make a ruling on it, but the nature of that ruling or the details that will be in it, which we're expecting any time now, would be that that would potentially open up the entire policy jurisdiction when it comes to school finance reform. So no, we are not stuck in Robin Hood, and anybody who thinks that we are is really promoting judicial activism, which I'm against. Robin Hood is dangerous for West Texas. It's dangerous for Permian Basin school districts specifically because we are being robbed blind by the state of Texas. And not only does that money come from our coffers here in the Permian Basin, it doesn't even go to the school districts that it's intended to help. So the only beneficiary, as far as I can tell, for the Robin Hood funding scheme is bureaucrats at the Texas Education Agency, and that's not benefiting anybody in Texas public schools. Texas public schools, in my view, should be places where teachers want to teach and students want to learn. And sometimes in order to do that, we have to get rid of a bogus one-size-fits-all approach, which is what the Robin Hood funding scheme is, and replace it with local control so that individual school districts can make decisions that are narrowly tailored to each particular community that they serve, because one-size-fits-all doesn't work, Robin Hood doesn't work, and that's why we have to make these changes. But disagree completely with the notion that we're somehow locked in because of a Texas Supreme Court ruling. The legislature has the ability to change that, and I will lead the fight if I'm reelected to repeal Robin Hood as we know it.
Mr. Crawford, same question. Your feelings on the Robin Hood formula for funding public education, and do you agree or disagree that the Supreme Court has sort of set that standard?
To me, just like I agree a lot with my opponent on this issue, we've got to return back local control. The 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. We've got to get it back to, we've got to make sure that we're funding education, not a bureaucracy. Once we start focusing on that and put power back to the parents and teachers, let them pick the path for the children, it's going to lower the overall budget for these schools and give them, allow them to have a lot better budget overall.
Okay. The next question, I'll start with Mr. Crawford, if we can. You've spoken about illegal immigration and its effects on our American culture. Many people don't believe that the federal government is doing its job in curbing illegals from entering our country. First of all, is it the state's job or the federal government's job, and what specific ideas do you think Austin should be engaged in?
First of all, it's the federal government's job. It is the federal government's job to take care of our secure our borders, but they're failing at it miserably. For us, we've got to get local control, give operational control to our local law enforcement, change the human smuggling laws. That is one thing that we've got to do. We've got to ban sanctuary cities, stop the magnets, stop interstate tuition for illegal immigrants. By going back to changing the human smuggling laws, in local law enforcement, all they need, when they arrest these people coming across, they can only keep them for a short time. They wait for ICE to come, and most of the time they don't show up. So what we can do is basically a coyote. A coyote brings 10 people across, he's breaking a state and federal law. The 10 people he's bringing across are only breaking a federal law. We need to go in and change the penal code where they're actually breaking a state and federal law, and that gives our local law enforcement the ability to sink their teeth in and actually get stuff done.
Thank you very much. Representative LANDGRAF, same question.
Under the Constitution of the United States, the federal government is specifically charged with protecting the borders of our country. We find ourselves in a unique problem. It's that when the federal government does have a specifically authorized function, like border security or border patrol, federal government's not doing its job. They have failed. The Obama administration has let the entire country down when it comes to enforcement of immigration laws and securing our border. You know, and the reason why that's so peculiar under these circumstances is that we're in areas where the federal government does not have any constitutional authority. They're meddling to a degree that they never have before. So it's like we have federal overreach on one hand and then federal underreach on the other hand when it comes to border security and immigration. But as a member of the Texas House of Representatives, I was a co-author of a bill with several of my colleagues because we were tired of sitting around waiting on Washington to do its job. And so in Texas, we said, we can't wait on federal inaction. We can't wait for the federal government to come in and execute the way that it's supposed to. So in Texas, where Washington failed, we stepped up to lead, and I'm very proud of our effort. In doing so, we have hired 250 new DPS troopers. We've equipped them with the technology that they need to do their jobs, whether it comes to surveillance technology, whether it comes to having appropriate and proper watercraft or aircraft to secure the border. I'm proud that we've been able to step up and do that because border security is the first step to fixing our immigration or illegal immigration problems that we have. Because without that secure border, when we get rid of the magnets, which is the second phase of our border security plan, that won't work if we don't have secure borders that can be respected. We still have a ways to go, but we're not relying on Uncle Sam to do their job anymore, and I'm very proud of that.
Mr. Crawford, one of your biggest supporters called Representative LANDGRAF's vote for new funding for UTPB and the TTU Health Sciences Center pork, and your biggest donor, Empower Texans, urged legislators to vote against the funding passed last session that will bring new engineering buildings to UTPB and new buildings to the Health Sciences Center. How would you have voted and why?
The issue with pork is everybody wants it. Everyone. My opponent did file a bill to help UTPB, but they ended up getting it bigger and bigger and bigger, not just helping us. They had to pass a bill that made everybody happy, not just helping us out here in West Texas. And to me, am I going to help everything I can to do the universities out here? Yes, I am. To me, I graduated from UTPB, and I'm proud of it. Graduated twice, undergrad and graduate. To me, that is my alma mater, and we're going to do everything we can to help them. And yes, Empower Texans does fight against it, and mainly because it was a huge bill that had millions and millions of dollars that was pork for everyone all across the state.
So, Mr. Crawford, would you have voted for or against the bill?
On that specific bill, I'd vote against it.
Okay. Representative LANDGRAF, what do you think of Empower Texans criticizing as not conservative those who are not in line with their preferred voting patterns? You scored 77% on their fiscal conservative indicator.
Well, I think groups like Empower Texans serve a very important function in our democracy here in the state of Texas, and I agree with them on just about every issue that they advocate. So I don't really have any good reason to criticize them, but whenever they have a scorecard item and they want me to vote against UTPB and vote against the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, when we have a very specific and demonstrated need for facilities at those schools, I'm going to vote for what's best for the district that I serve and to serve the people that elected me when there is a conflict between what is good for the district and what's good for getting a higher score on a scorecard. Because the only scorecard that matters to me at the end of the day, while I respect what groups like Empower Texans are doing, I have to side with the people that I serve. And so that's what's always going to be most important to me. And on the issue of Texas Tech and UTPB, for a medical academic building and an engineering building respectively, those are absolutely vital for the continued economic prosperity of the Permian Basin. And so I don't apologize for voting to support those projects. And the one reason why is, and this is what gets lost on people across the other parts of across the rest of the state, is that out here in the Permian Basin, we contribute more to the wealth of the state of Texas because of our oil and gas production than any other part of the state. Now, we don't have the population out here that the big metro, that the big cities of the metro areas have, but we still are absolutely vital to the success of the state of Texas. We like to brag about the Texas miracle. The Texas miracle would be impossible without the Permian Basin and the time, talent, and treasure that we contribute to it. We as a state who receives so much from us deserve to get at least an equitable share when it comes to investing in higher education opportunities. So whenever there's a conflict between my district and an outside group, I'm always going to vote with the district, and I'm proud of that.
And Mr. Crawford, I'd like to ask sort of a rebuttal question to you on this point. Given that Empower Texans and related PACs and people have given you so much money, do you plan on always voting based on the regular emails that this organization sends out telling its the people that they support how they would vote?
For me, I am my own man, and I am a fiscally responsible person. I have run my own business, debt-free from day one. And to me, that's why they backed me. They backed my opponent last time. They gave him money last time. But what I like to point out, there's about 3 or 4 PACs that gave me money. That's it. 3 or 4. My opponent has had over 26 PACs given to him. So I'd like you to raise that question to my opponent.
Representative LANDGRAF, would you like to respond?
Well, sure. No, I definitely have multiple PACs that have contributed, and the issue that comes along with that is, what that means. I mean, I'm clearly not beholden to any group. That's one reason why I'm being attacked by some of these groups, is because I wouldn't do exactly what they wanted me to. So the fact that anybody's contributing to my campaign doesn't really mean a whole lot, because it's like I said in my previous answer, I'm going to do what's best for the district that I represent, and I'm going to live or die with what I think is best for the people that I've been entrusted to serve. So the fact that we have different contributors, also have more contributors overall, coming into our campaign. So to act like just because I have a larger number is any sort of indicator, the only thing that I would mention in response to that is that more than 60% of my total contributions have come from right inside this district. My opponent has had about the same amount come from outside of the district. And I think when you're looking at the total number of dollars, that's what's most important, is where is that coming from? My support's homegrown, just like I am. It's coming from right here. It's not coming from other places. And that's what I'm proud of, because I'm serving the people that I represent that are right here in Ector County, in Ward County, Winkler County, and Andrews County. Okay.
And I'm sorry, gentlemen, since we've sort of stumbled onto it, I'd like to ask another rebuttal question of each of you. Mr. Crawford, $21,028.86 of your more than $81,000 in contributions have come from PACs. Why is that?
Overall, the reason, basically, people want to support me, not just from people from here. And when he refers to the 60%, whatever that from outside, that I've got from outside the district, If you look at where they're from, Midland County, Crane County, they're facing the same issues we are here. And to me, it's important that we look at that and focus on that, not just, where the money came from as far as, the 21,000, whatever. Some of them are supporting me because they want to. Some of them are supporting me because they stand for what I stand for. And I am proud of that fact. Thank you very much.
And Representative Landgraf, $43,000 of your more than $160,000 raised has come from PACs. Why is that?
Well, I have a proven conservative record in the Texas legislature. Part of that record includes keeping taxes low, keeping the regulatory environment minimal and predictable, and that's good for business. So I have supported conservative policies that will attract businesses to our great state. It will allow people who already live here to start their own business so that they can thrive, so that they can pursue the American dream. That's what businesses want. They want to do business in a place where there are low taxes, low regulations, and a predictable regulatory environment. I've pursued policies that do that, and so a lot of the PACs that have contributed money to me are doing business here in the state, and they want to keep that regulatory environment minimal and predictable. And since I reflect those policies, that's why I've attracted their support.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Brooks, I have a question here from the audience. We have a man here that has served 8.5 years in the Marine Corps. First off, thank you for your service, sir. His question for you is this, Brooks. Your website states that you have military experience training. He's assuming that you meant your time at Texas A&M. And if you would just clarify that, and he wants to know if you feel like that's a misrepresentation to military service men and women.
Oh, no, not at all. And I would never claim that I have served in the military. My website biography says that I received U.S. Army ROTC training while in the Corps of Cadets at A&M. No, I've never been commissioned as an officer, or nor have I enlisted. But the training that I received at Texas A&M in the Corps of Cadets is very important to part of who I am, both in my personal and professional career. And so I think that's something that I'm very proud to share, and I'm proud to share with supporters. That's never been an issue. Nobody's ever, this is the first time that I've heard of anybody even referring to there being some sort of misleading. That's been on my website for years now. So no, I do want to thank the gentleman for his service, and for all of our active men and women who are serving our country, and for all of our veterans. Yes, and I would never do anything that would mislead or do anything to dishonor their service and their sacrifice.
As a follow-up to that, talk about your support, things you do for the military, if you will. I'll ask you the same question when he's through. Sure.
Well, we've been talking a lot about the shortcomings of the federal government, and how, Texas, it's not really our job within the state government to support our Department of Defense or support the Department of Veterans Affairs, because there is a difference there. But in Texas, again, just like we did with border security, we're doing everything that we can to step up and help where the federal government is failing. The first example that I can think of is how we've supported veterans just in the last legislative session. Let's say that you have served a career as an enlisted man in the Army or the Navy, and let's say that you were a mechanic. You have real-world practical job experience to be able to practice your trade. There have, up to this point, there's been difficulty for some veterans after they've left the service of our country trying to find jobs in the civilian world, and in a lot of cases they're doing the exact same thing as civilians that they did while serving in our nation's in the uniform of our armed forces. What we've done in Texas is we've taken out a lot of the bureaucratic red tape to make that transition easier, so that these veterans can better support their families. There's also an important action that we didn't take to effectively keep a commitment that we made to Texas veterans to enable them, if the GI Bill is run out, where they can go to public colleges or universities in the state of Texas with tuition being paid for as gratitude for their service to our country. That came under attack during the legislative session, but I was proud to step up and support the commitment that we made to veterans, so that they can not only help themselves but help their families for generations to come.
Mr. Crawford, if elected, what would you do to support military?
I support military now. I create jobs. I have people working for me that have been veterans. I have people that are working for me that are currently in the reserves. And to me, that's what we've got to focus on, is making sure our economy making sure our budgets are right, going down there and, fighting for every line item, line by line, looking at it. I'm in the efficiency business. We go into companies, we look at them from the top to bottom and bottom to top and see where everything's going wrong. And to me, creating jobs for veterans is the best thing we can do for them, and creating a great economy for other businesses to come in to create jobs for veterans. Thank you very much.
I've visited with each of you individually on our radio show, and have been at other forums where you've been at. I've looked at your websites, and on paper, you both look pretty close to the same. Pro-life, gun control issues. You mentioned taxes tonight, immigration issues. These things all look pretty much the same. It seems in every passing year, though, it gets worse. There's contention between voters and elected officials. That's distrust, misunderstanding, minority or special interest commanding more and more of your attention. What is the answer to all of this, and what moral high ground do you take? And I'll start with you, Mr. Crawford. What moral high ground do you take to Austin if you're elected?
To me, my faith is founded in God. Between that, my wife, and the constituents out here, my cell phone number's on everything. I put it out there so you can call me anytime. And to me, that is, you are my accountability teams, whether I'm here, there, at night. Now, I do shut it off in the middle of the night, so I do need some sleep occasionally. And I'm sure he would agree to that, too. But overall, that is what I'm out here for, is to be held accountable for everything, and that's what I'm out here running for.
Okay. Representative Landgraf, same question. Do you need?
Same question?
Same question.
Okay. Well, for the last 2 years, one thing that I've consistently been saying about being a public servant and being your state representative is that I feel the weight of the responsibility of this job all the time, and it's something that I take very seriously. And as important as it is, it's still only the third most important thing in my life, because the most important thing is my faith in God, my faith in Christ, and then the second thing is my family. And those two things will always be more important than anything else, including my service to the state of Texas. But making sure that those two priorities, my faith and my family, continue to remain more important than public service is what helps keep me grounded. What also keeps me grounded is the fact that I enjoy being home. I enjoy being back here in Odessa. In fact, during the legislative session, we would normally, on a normal week, we'll work from Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday, depending on how the floor calendar is working. But as soon as our business was done for the day, on the last day of the week, Shelby, who was with me most of the time when we were in session, we would be booking it immediately back to Odessa to be here for the weekend so that I could be close to the people who I represent and serve, because I can't do my job without having that constant interaction and building those relationships with the people that I'm here to serve and my fellow West Texans. And so faith and family are what keep me grounded, but then also being close to those who I represent. And I think from the time our legislative session ended at the beginning of June till the end of the year, I was at about 200 public events, meeting with constituents, talking with them about what's important to them. And that's why I have a great deal of confidence that I'm doing the right things for them in the legislature. Now, I know we don't all agree on everything all the time, but I do have my finger on the pulse of this district, and that's absolutely necessary to do the job, and that's necessary to be grounded in what we do.
Mr. Crawford, some of your ads appear to question Representative Landgraf's values and Christianity. Why is that?
Not once have I ever questioned Mr. Landgraf's Christianity. Not once. That is something that the paper either put words in my mouth or falsely stated. I know he's a Christian. Matter of fact, and you can attest to this, one day someone walked into one of my campaign person's store and said something about on Mr. Landgraf's Wikipedia page. It said that he had changed from being a Catholic to being agnostic and changed from being a Republican to a Democrat. And the first thing I did is try to get a hold of Mr. Landgraf and make sure that he knew about it. And one, that it wasn't us that was making those changes. And two, so that he could make those changes, put them back to where they originally were before someone else got it and got a hold of it and started making big decisions based on that. Thank you.
So real quick, could you explain the House Bill 37 ad?
Yes, on House Bill 37, and what you're referring to basically in the paper, is that my opponent falsely stated it only applied to a political organization, while the law actually states that it applies to a person or group of persons who is not a political organization, or sorry, that is not a political committee. And to me, when you start looking at that, and you start talking to preachers, start talking to nonprofits, this even came up with Texas Right to Life. They even put in their article saying that it was a dangerous bill. And to me, when you have people in Houston talking about, the HERO ordinance where transgender men are trying to go in women's bathrooms, and if the churches, they stood up against and tried to fight against it, and they won. And to me, with that type of bill in there, that would make all these churches and nonprofits turn over their donor list. And that opens up to political retribution from the radical left. And that's what I didn't think was right.
And Representative Landgraf, if you could, first of all, talk to us a little bit about the House Bill 37 ad, and then also talk to us a little bit about the specifics of House Bill 37 in reference to what Mr. Crawford's speaking about.
Sure. I have a copy of House Bill 37 right here, and I invite anybody to come up and take a look at it at your convenience. I have extra copies. Nowhere in this bill does it say anything about churches, does it say anything about tithing, does it say anything about anything other than political contributions and political organizations. And that's really about as simple as it gets when it comes to that particular bill. Now, there was, I think, a deliberate attempt, and I'm not saying that my opponent was the one who was making the deliberate attempt, because that mail was being used in races all over the place. I'm not sure that my opponent even had approval to do it, because this was all part of a larger campaign that's being waged across the state. But the fact of the matter is that there is a deliberate attempt to mislead, and the fact that my opponent, in talking about House Bill 37 just a minute ago, was also talking about the HERO ordinance in the city of Houston, which not only do I have nothing to do with, but the Texas legislature has nothing to do with, but he's mixing the two as if they're one and the same. And that's all done to mislead you, because the fact of the matter is, I'm proud of my conservative record. We cut taxes. We strengthened Second Amendment rights. We protected life. We reinforced the border while balancing the budget. That's a tough record to run against, and I understand that. The other fact of the matter is that not only is HB 37 something that doesn't infringe on our religious liberties, I was the co-author of a successful bill that Governor Abbott signed into law called the Pastor Protection Act, which actually reinforces and protects our religious liberties across the state. So not only is what mail was sent out deliberately misleading, it couldn't be further from the truth as far as what my position is on religious liberties. And if HB 37, if this bill, if I thought or knew this to have anything to do with curbing our religious liberties, I never would have lent my name to it. And that's as simple as it gets. And I'm glad that we have an opportunity to discuss the facts. The text is right here. I invite anybody who wants a copy of it. I'll provide it to you.
And Mr. Crawford, I'd like to offer you a little bit of rebuttal on specifically on Representative Landgraf saying that these ads are misleading and that they're coming out at least under the guise of being from your campaign.
No, and to me, you start looking at even Center of Competitive Politics put out a letter. They put out a 7-page letter stating that this applied to nonprofits, and then it would, this would open up these groups for donors to all these groups for political retribution. I also have a copy of HB 37 with me as well. I'd be happy to sit down and discuss it with you and go line by line to, for my stance on it.
So do you not believe that the ads that are coming out are misleading?
No, I do not.
Thank you.
We have a question from the audience. This came from a woman who is here today, and she would like to know from both of you, what have you done to support law enforcement? Mr. Crawford, we'll start with you.
To me, I follow tech stop regulations as much as possible. I don't speed. If I do get pulled over, I put my hands on the steering wheel. But overall, being nice to them, being gentle to them, letting them know when something's wrong, supporting them, praying for them, doing everything you can. And what I'm going to do when I get down there and as your state representative is go amend Section 20.05 of the Penal Code. Let them sink teeth into actually when they arrest these people. Give them the resources they need. Instead of making it where it's just catch and release, give them the ability to actually, when they go out there and they're on the duty and they're having to catch an illegal alien, let them know that when they actually get them, that they know that they can actually do something with it, and it's not just going to be a catch-release program.
Representative LANDGRAF, same question for you.
Sure. Well, it's hard for me to talk about my support for law enforcement and our law enforcement community without thinking of DPS Trooper Chad Matlock. Now, some of you may remember Trooper Matlock was shot in the line of duty in Odessa over the summer, and I had the opportunity to go visit with him at Medical Center Hospital while he was recovering. And I remember calling him in advance, let him know that anything that I can do, either personally or as a representative of the state government, that I was happy to do it because he'd sacrificed so much for us. And he said, well, yeah, Brooks, there is something that you can do. And I said, well, Trooper, you just tell me, what is it? He said, can you bring me a Whataburger? #1 with the chocolate shake. And I said, Trooper, we can do that. So I very gladly, best $6 I've ever spent in my life, took it to him. And anyway, the burger was a little bit cold by the time we got up there, but he sure did enjoy the shake. But I say all that to say that my legislative record also reflects support for law enforcement. The border security package deal that I was telling you about, that's hiring 250 new DPS troopers, but it's also providing them with the equipment and the tools that they need to be able to do the job that we expect them to do on our behalf to keep us safe and secure here in the state of Texas. Now, this isn't just a bunch of empty rhetoric on my part, because not only do I have the legislative record and the personal admiration for these men, but I back the blue, but the blue backs me as well. I'm very proud that I have the endorsement of the Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas, which represents all of our peace officers and police officers, sheriff's officers and deputies all across the state. They do so much for us, and I'm very happy to support them as well so that we can have a better and safer state of Texas.
My next question will be for Representative Landgraf. In an especially conservative district, which I believe we are in, as Tatum mentioned earlier, you have no Democratic opponent, independent opponent. This is the election in this primary race. Many voices have come out with concern of your support, Representative, of a perceived moderate such as Speaker Strauss. Can you explain your vote for Speaker Strauss and why you support him?
Sure. This came up earlier today, if you can imagine that. The speaker's race is absolutely part of the legislative process. And it's, when I decided that I was going to run for state representative 2 years ago, my goal was to go down, to be pro-life, to be pro-gun, fight to keep our taxes low, and be a strong voice for West Texas, as you've heard me say. My goal was not to go down and get embroiled in inside Austin baseball and inside parlor games like a speaker's race. But I do know that it's a responsibility for every House member to be able to cast that vote. Going back to my experience at A&M, our commandant, when I was a senior in the Corps down there, was a guy named General Van Alstyne, and he just retired from the Pentagon and was coming down to lead our cadets. And I remember when he introduced himself to us, he said something that was very poignant that sticks with me to this day, and that is, you don't go to war with the army that you want. You go to war with the army that you have. Well, when I went down to the state capitol, not at all like war, but I had two options as far as the speaker's race is concerned. I didn't get to pick what my options were, but I had to pick from the options that I was given. Now, before I got down to the capitol, we knew that there were two declared candidates for speaker. I invited each of those men to come out to Odessa, to come out here to District 81 and visit with us, see what life is like out here in the oil patch, drive on our roads, see what those are like. I wanted them to see what we see on a daily basis. One gentleman took me up on the invitation, the other gentleman did not. That had a lot to do with how I was going to vote on the speaker's race. I also looked in the backgrounds of both of their gentlemen. Neither were perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I looked at one and saw a record in Texas. I looked at the other and I saw a record from California. He just recently moved here. to run one term in the Texas House and then run for Speaker. But when he was in California, he ran on a pro-amnesty platform when he ran for Congress unsuccessfully a couple of years before. So the notion that there was a stark difference, or that one was clearly more conservative than the other, was unfortunately not present. Had that been the case, my decision probably would have been easier.
Time.
But I had to make the decision that was available to me.
And I have a follow-up to that for you, Representative, and this will also be for Mr. Crawford as well. There are some folks who believe that choosing the Speaker of the legislature, just like choosing the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States Senate, is really not the business of the voters. And the voters can see a Strauss or a Turner or someone else and have one opinion about them, but it's really more about the business of the legislature and who can move that forward in the best way. Is that your opinion, that it's more of an in-house housekeeping matter and really shouldn't affect voters outside Austin?
No, because that does affect everybody. It affects every Texan, who our elected leaders are. Now that decision is made internally in the House of Representatives, and that's one reason why I had to take that vote so seriously, is because the impact of my vote, the impact of how the leadership of the legislative chambers turns out, has an impact on all of us in Texas, and that's what makes it a very difficult decision given the options that you have. So no, I completely disagree with the notion that leadership races don't have an impact on the rest of Texas. Clearly they do. But what is important to note is that there are the vote for Speaker is the first vote that we take during a 140-day legislative session. That's number one. It gets knocked out on the first day of the job. Then there are thousands and thousands of other votes that have to be taken. When I ran 2 years ago, my wife and I knocked on thousands of doors, just like we're knocking on thousands of doors this time. Not once in knocking on somebody's door, visiting their living room, sitting on their front porch, did anybody say, how are you going to vote on the Speaker's race? No, they wanted to talk about transportation. They wanted to talk about education. They wanted to talk about protecting their Second Amendment rights. They wanted to talk about what was important to them. They didn't want to talk about the parlor games. So I can understand how there is a difference there, but the impact is real. So I had to do what I thought was best to do what was best to take care of the people that I represent. And sometimes, and so that's what drove that decision. And then also having, looking in the backgrounds of the candidates and having, and evaluating their willingness to come out here and help serve West Texas, just like I'm trying to do.
Okay. Mr. Crawford, I'll give you a chance to respond with that as well. Primarily to the notion that, do you consider it an in-house keeping piece of business, or is the Speaker's race that elected officials vote on, is that important to voters?
No, it's very important to voters because the Speaker sets this, basically sets the agenda for the session. And to me, that is one of the most important votes that you're going to have going down there. And for me, when my opponent talks about this guy from California, he's referring to a top 10 ranked most conservative guy in our House legislature, Scott Turner. He's not referring to some, middle of the road Republican. He's talking to a top 10 ranked most conservative guy. The guy that has the same values as you and me in this room. And so to me, when you put up against him versus a rhino or a liberal Republican who was originally elected by 65 Democrats and 11 Republicans, to me, we've got to fight for our God-given liberties. And to me, that starts by putting true conservative people as our Speaker.
Mr. Crawford, you and your campaign have sent mixed messages during your campaign about Representative Landgraf's supposed promise to vote for Turner for Speaker of the House. At times, you said the promise was made to Turner and other times to supporters. Since Representative Landgraf has previously signed a document filed with Empower Texans stating he had not pledged to vote for anyone, how do you defend the position that he made such promises?
I have also knocked on thousands of doors. And some of those doors I knocked on did say that they asked him whether he would vote for Speaker Strauss. And he said they told him no. And to me, that is why we're in this race. Because to me, lying at the door, we just don't have it. That is not the values that West Texas can stand upon. That's not the future that's great for our kids.
Representative Landgraf, I'd like to give you a minute to respond.
That's a very easy response. I didn't make any pledge, private or public, to any candidate in the speaker's race. And I know that there's political hay that's trying to be made about that. This didn't come up until we were in a highly charged political environment where these accusations are being made. And so the reality is that was not an issue. We had forums just like this 2 years ago. We weren't talking about speaker's politics. When I entered the race 2 years ago, there wasn't even a speaker's race because only one candidate had filed. There wasn't even a challenger in the race. So to somehow think or talk about speaker's politics being at the issue of this is nothing more than revisionist history. And again, it's an effort to go back, and we can talk about Joe Strauss and that all we want. The fact of the matter is, as Governor Abbott said, we just finished the most conservative legislative session in the history of Texas. I was proud to be a part of it, and that's really the proof is in the pudding, and that's what I'm focused on, and anything else besides that is an attempt by political operatives to muddy the waters.
Time. Okay, thank you. My next question is for Mr. Crawford. Second Amendment protections has been an issue championed by your opponent, and in fact some bills that he has passed for open carry and this kind of thing. And he is also on your webpage as well, very, very protective of Second Amendment rights. Did he not go far enough with those, or is there a difference between you on Second Amendment rights? It seems that it looks the same from both candidates.
No, there were a lot of bills that were filed that were, more pro Second Amendment. The one that they passed, open carry, it was a very much watered down bill, left a lot of confusion in there for law enforcement and gun rights people. And to me, there was a lot of stuff that could be done. Constitutional carry was a bill that was brought up, HB 195. My opponent did not sign on to it. He talked to people saying that he would, and there's people that that will confirm that fact. And I actually got endorsements from people based on that fact. To me, I will go down there, I will fight for your Second Amendment rights. The name of my company is called Musketball Group. So if you're ever wondering where I stand on Second Amendment rights, you can just, that proof's in the pudding too. So, answer your question.
Okay. Representative Landgraf, about your bills that you've supported and passed, and how do you respond?
My Second Amendment record is impeccable. I put it up against anybody's, but you don't have to ask me. I have the endorsement of the National Rifle Association, the Texas State Rifle Association. I'm the only candidate in the race that has either one of those, much less both of those endorsements, and I'm the only candidate in the race who has an A rating based on a voting record from the National Rifle Association. Very proud of that. The Second Amendment is fundamental to our rights and liberties if we are to endure as a free society. To me, it's not a catchphrase. It's not anything like that. It is the foundation of our liberty in Texas and the United States. I'm proud that my voting record reflects that, and I'm proud that organizations nationwide and statewide that value these principles as much as I do recognize that and have endorsed my candidacy.
Thank you.
Representative Landgraf, with certain organizations raising questions about the intent behind bills you've been involved with, specifically House Bill 37, do you feel the legislation you've written, helped author, or supported is too vague?
No, I don't, but I think certain political operatives are just trying to use it to score political points. And since you mentioned HB 37, let's just talk about that. I mean, we've heard my opponent talk about what criticisms there are of it, and I've shown you in black and white print how that's not the case. But just to go back and show how this is revisionist history, opponents of HB 37, while the legislature was in session, while this bill was being heard in committee, while testimony was being provided, the opponents of this same bill, at the time it was being debated, didn't even talk about, we're talking about the people who were against it dead set, didn't want it to see the light of day. None of them said anything about it being or relating to churches or tithing or anything like that. It was still in the context of political organizations because that's what the bill pertains to. So even its fiercest critics at the time didn't raise these arguments because they're not true. So the fact that we even have to talk about there being any vagueness to this is completely immaterial because the opponents at the time weren't making those arguments when they had every reason to do so.
Mr. Crawford, I'd also like to ask you, do you feel like there are any other examples where you feel like Representative Landgraf's bills have been too vague or could use refining? besides House Bill 37?
Actually, I want to go back and address HB 37 because it has in the House research, in the digest, it has text, it has, like I said, the people who were there to witness, and it shows in there at the bottom, those who are against it. It says that they were, afraid that would be open up their donors to political retribution. And to me, that right there just states, the exact opposite of what he just said.
Donors, not congregants, not tithers, not anybody relating to religious organizations.
I donate to my church a lot.
Okay, I'm sorry, gentlemen. We're going to move on here.
Okay. This will be our last question, gentlemen, that we have time for today. District 81 covers 4 counties: Andrews, Ector, Ward, and Winkler. Yet you're the only 2 candidates. You're both from Odessa in Ector County. What would you like to say right now specifically for voters in the other 3 counties that would help gain support for your election? We'll start with Mr. Crawford.
I grew up in a small county, one-town county, one stoplight county, Crane. I know what it's like to live in the counties. I know what it's like to go in the schools. I know what it's like to go in the courthouse almost every day. I know what it's like to live in those towns, small grocery stores. And to me, that's the type of person I am. I'll go down there and represent you every day in and day out as your state representative.
Okay. Representative Landgraf, the other counties.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about what they've said to me and about me. Andrews County, where my wife Shelby's from, my father-in-law Randy lived and graduated from high school, and where our daughter's great-grandfather, who is her namesake, are buried. They say, thank you, Brooks, for always being here. Thank you for coming and visiting with our high school students. Thank you when WCS, one of the biggest job creators in Andrews County, was threatened by a bill. Thank you for stepping up and killing it, because it would have been bad, not only for Andrews County, it would have been bad for Texas, and it would have been a bunch of bureaucratic red tape that would have been unnecessary. So that's what they say. In Winkler County, they say, Brooks, thank you for stepping up and fighting for Highway 302 for us. Highway 302 is a death trap once you get down off the Cap Rock, west of No Trees, in between No Trees and Kermit. More than 100% fatality rate in recent years on that stretch of highway. It got so bad that residents of Winkler County, by the hundreds, more than 1,000, signed a petition saying we have to do something about 302. And the sheriff of Winkler County, George Keeley, drove down to the Capitol during the session and handed me that petition, said, Brooks, we got to do something about 302. I said, Sheriff, you're absolutely right. So I marched that petition across the street to the executive director at TxDOT and said, General Weber, we got a problem in Winkler County. What are we going to do about it? And he pulled out his map, and we got a solution. The fruits of that labor is already seen. If you drive now between 302 and from Odessa to Kermit, you'll see that it's a much safer road with new surface, with rumble strips down the median and on the shoulders, and with additional turning lanes, and the fatality rate has dropped dramatically. I'm very proud of that, and that's why they say thank you, Brooks and Winkler County. In Ward County, they say thank you. Thanks for always coming to our high school football games. Thanks for coming to our basketball games. The kids see it. They love your support, but also thanks for helping us get better management at the Monaghan Sandhill State Park. Nobody else was listening to us, but you stepped up and you were our voice, and we appreciate that very much. So to me, all 4 counties, they're all first among equals as far as I'm concerned, because everybody in West Texas deserves to have a strong voice fighting on their behalf, and I'm happy to do that, not only for my hometown in Odessa, but for the other 3 counties as well.
We want to have time for our closing statements. Jay.
You now each will have 2 minutes for your closing remarks. Representative, we'll start with you.
Well, again, thank you to the hosts for having us. I think this is a good public service for us to be able to discuss these issues with the people that we represent or are seeking to represent. And as y'all know, I was born and raised here in Odessa. My family's been ranching here for 5 generations, and what is part of you is what's part of me, and I'm very proud of that. I've already talked about my legislative accomplishments, about my proven conservative record, about cutting taxes by $3.9 billion, about strengthening our Second Amendment rights, about protecting life to unprecedented levels in the state of Texas. You've also heard me talk about what we've done to better secure the border because the federal government in Washington, D.C. just wouldn't do it. And we did it all while balancing the state budget and cutting per capita spending. I'm very proud of that, and I think you can tell because I've been talking about it a lot. But I'm not one to rest on my laurels, because if Texas is going to endure as the best place in America to live and work and raise a family, we have to confront the challenges that we face. The first three that I can think of that really confront us are: we have to repel federal overreach from Washington. We have to fight against illegal immigration. And we have to fight for Texas energy and Texas education. I have the fire in my belly to continue serving, and that's why I'm standing before you tonight, asking for the honor to continue serving as your strong conservative voice for West Texas. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. And may God continue to bless this great state of Texas. Thank you.
And Mr. Crawford, your 2-minute closing statement.
Thank y'all so much for coming out. And I'd like to thank the OA and KCRS and CBS 7 for putting this on tonight. This race is about the difference between a politician and a statesman. That's what it boils down to, ladies and gentlemen. Me and my opponent, we're going to think the same on a lot of things. We're going to be fundamentally different on others. One of the biggest things that's going to be facing our state is budget. When they originally planned it, it was they were betting on oil staying at around $64 a barrel. It is now not. And you and I know that. We're all probably suffering from that right now. To me, we've got to sit there and focus on that. That is the way that we're going to have to make cuts. That's what I do in my business every day, is make the hard decisions. Matter of fact, back in the 80s, little family story here. Back in the 80s, the last one of the big busts in 85, 86, oil was in the single digits. Interest rates were high. My parents made a decision to be financially independent. And I remember those times. I remember, wearing hand-me-downs. Unfortunately, I only had an older sister. No, not really. But they made a decision to be financially independent. It took them about 2 years to do it. And once they did, they saved up enough money to get a license plate. It was this plate. It still sits on my dad's wall. He's still debt-free to this day. He got right with God and got debt-free. And to me, I remember when I was 8 years old, I said, "Dad, what does this mean?" He said, "Son, it means I don't owe anyone a dead-gum thing." I run my business the same way. And I believe that the government should be run the same way, too, on the Dave Ramsey plan. I'm Josh Crawford. I'd appreciate your vote tomorrow. And thank you very much.
We want to thank both of you so much for being here with us this evening. We want to thank everyone who's joined us in the audience. A reminder that early voting does begin tomorrow, and Election Day is March the 1st. Thanks to our partners at the OA and KCRS, and thank you for being here tonight.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. That's a wrap.